woman found a strange key in a taxi. When she used it, she unlocked a shocking secret. The rain fell hard on the city that Thursday evening. Cold drops hit the windshield of the yellow taxi as it pulled up beside the curb. Clara Hayes held her umbrella low as she stepped inside, brushing her wet coat and sitting quietly in the back seat. The driver gave a tired nod and started driving. Clara wasn't someone who liked surprises. She lived by her schedule, took the same bus each morning, worked at the public library, and returned home to a small apartment with quiet music and a cup of tea. That night, though, the bus was late and the rain was too heavy to wait, so she chose the taxi. A small choice, but it changed everything. She looked down and noticed something odd on the seat next to her. A key. Not just any key, it looked old, rusted, and had strange symbols carved into it. A red ribbon was tied around the handle like a gift or maybe a memory. She picked it up carefully. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I think someone left this key." The driver glanced in the mirror. "Not mine," he said. "People leave all kinds of junk back there. You can toss it if you want." Clara frowned. "It looks important." The driver shrugged. "Suit yourself." Clara held the key the whole ride, looking at the designs on the ribbon. Something about it felt strange, not dangerous, but not normal either. When she got out, she hesitated, then slipped the key into her coat pocket. At home, she placed it on her kitchen table and stared at it. The symbols looked familiar, but she couldn't figure out why. Maybe something she'd seen in a book at the library? Or a dream? She didn't know. She went to bed, but her thoughts stayed on that key. The next day at work, Clara couldn't stop thinking about it. During her lunch break, she searched the internet for symbols like the ones on the ribbon, but nothing matched. She almost gave up until she remembered a story she once heard from an old man who visited the library. He spoke of a place behind the forgotten train station, a building with no name, a storage unit, hidden and unused. The man had said it was locked tight and had a strange mark above the door. Clara's heart raced. She looked again at the ribbon, the same mark. She left work early and took the long walk to the old train station. Rusted tracks led to nowhere, and weeds pushed through the cracks in the ground. The building he described was still there, grey and broken, with vines climbing the walls. She stepped closer. Her fingers trembled. Above the door was the same symbol from the ribbon. Her breath caught. Was this really happening? She pulled out the key and pressed it into the lock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a loud click, the door creaked open. Inside, the air smelled of dust and time. Papers were stacked on shelves, some falling apart. There were old boxes, black and white photos, and yellowed letters. In the corner sat a wooden chest. Her name was carved on the top. Clara gasped. She hadn't written it. No one knew she would find this place. How was her name here? She opened the chest. Inside were files, newspaper clippings, and a small leather-bound book with her father's name on the cover. Thomas Hayes. Clara's father died when she was 7. Her mother never spoke of him much. He worked in something important, she had said, then left it at that. Clara had stopped asking years ago. She flipped through the book. It was filled with notes, maps, and warnings. One line repeated over and over: "Protect the truth, even from yourself." Her hands shook as she turned the pages. There were pictures of her father with men in suits, letters with strange codes, and pages marked "Confidential." One letter was addressed to her. "If you're reading this, it means the key found you, and the truth is ready to be uncovered. But be careful. Once you open one door, many others will follow." Her heart pounded. She felt dizzy. What had her father done? Why did he leave this for her? And who else knew? That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Every shadow in her apartment felt closer. Every creak in the hallway made her jump. She didn't tell anyone, not yet. But deep down, she knew someone else already knew she had the key, and they were watching. Clara kept the key close to her now. hidden deep in the pocket of her coat even when she was home. She didn't trust leaving it anywhere. Every time she touched it, it felt warm, almost alive. At the library the next day, she couldn't focus. She fumbled while organizing books. Her CO worker, Marla, raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay, Clara?" Clara gave a weak smile. "Didn't sleep well." Marla leaned on the desk. "You're always like clockwork. Now you're dropping books and drinking 2 cups of coffee before noon." Spill. Clara hesitated. She trusted Marla. But how do you tell someone you opened a hidden room with an old key you found in a taxi? "I just found something strange. That's all." Marla tilted her head. "Strange how?" Clara shook her head. "I'm not sure yet." Marla gave her a look that said you're holding back, but she let it go. Clara felt the weight of the key in her pocket again and excused herself for an early lunch break. She went back to the hidden storage unit. This time, she brought gloves and a flashlight. The building was still there, the door still open. She stepped inside and started carefully going through the papers. There were old files marked with dates from the 1970s and 1980s. Many had her father's name listed under Agent Hayes. Some had the word "cipher" stamped in red across the top. She pulled out a file labeled Echo Protocol. Inside were photos of a man who looked like her father, only older. The dates didn't match. The file was from 5 years ago. But her father died over 20 years ago. She stared at the photo, heart thudding. Is this a mistake? Or... She felt dizzy. Stepping outside for air, she leaned against the wall and looked around. Across the street, a black car was parked. The engine was off. She couldn't see the driver clearly, but she felt watched. Back at her apartment, she locked every door and checked the windows twice. Her phone rang and she jumped. It was a block number. She let it ring. No voicemail. Later that night, someone slid a note under her door. "Stop looking. It's not your story to finish." Clara stared at the words, hands trembling. She looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The next day, she called her mother. They hadn't talked in weeks. Her mom's voice was soft, gentle, the kind that always made Clara feel 10 years old again. "Mom, did Dad ever work for the government?" There was a long silence. "Where is this coming from?" her mom asked. "I just need to know." Her mother's voice dropped. "Clara, leave it alone. So it's true." Another pause. "He did what he thought was right," her mom said quietly. "But it wasn't safe. That world was never safe. That's why I never told you." "Why would someone be following him?" Clara whispered. Her mom's voice shook. "They never wanted you to know. If they think you've found something." "What was he hiding?" Clara asked. A long breath. "Everything." The line went dead. Clara stood in her apartment, phone pressed to her ear, even though the call was over. She felt like the ground under her feet was shifting. She pulled out the leather book again. On the last page, a phrase was written in bold letters. "Find Oliver." No last name, no details, just that. The next day, Clara went back to the archive and found a folder marked Oliver Marks. It held a photo of a boy, maybe 10 years old, with red hair and bright green eyes. The same eyes as Clara. She sank to her knees. She had no siblings, at least. She thought she didn't. Clara couldn't take her eyes off the photo. The boy, Oliver, looked so familiar. The curve of his mouth, the shape of his nose. She saw her father's features in him. And her own. She flipped through the folder. There were reports written in code, redacted lines, and scribbled notes in the margins. One said, "Subject relocated, monitored monthly, asset unaware of bloodline link." Clara whispered to herself, "He doesn't know." She sat on the cold floor, folder open on her lap, heart pounding in her chest. If Oliver was her brother, why had no one told her? Why had he been hidden away? She went back home and started searching online. She typed his name, his birth year, anything she could gather from the documents. After hours of searching, she found a possible match. Oliver Marks, a mechanic in a small town 2 hours away. No social media, no photos, just a business listing and a grainy staff photo on the garage's website. She stared at the screen. It was him. Older now, maybe in his 30s, but it was him. Clara didn't wait. The next morning, she took a train out of the city. The small town was quiet. A line of old shops, a gas station, a bakery. She found the garage at the end of the main road. Inside, the air smelled of oil and rubber. A man with grease-stained hands and a kind face wiped his palms on a rag and looked up. "Can I help you?" he asked. Clara's voice trembled. "Are you Oliver Marks?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, do I know you?" She shook her head. "No, I'm Clara Hayes." He blinked, then frowned. "That name sounds familiar." Clara reached into her bag and pulled out the photo. "This is you." He looked at it, confused. "Where did you get this?" "It was in a file, hidden, along with letters from my father." "Your father, too?" Oliver froze. "I don't have a sister." "I think you do, though." He stared at her, his jaw clenched. "This some kind of joke?" "No," she said softly. "I didn't believe it either. But our father, Thomas Hayes, he left us both behind, in different ways." Oliver rubbed his face with both hands. "He left when I was 5. My mom said he disappeared. No answers. Just gone." Clara nodded. "He died, or at least that's what I was told. But now, I don't know what's real anymore." Oliver looked around the garage. "Let's go somewhere private." They walked to a quiet diner across the street. Over cups of coffee, Clara showed him everything: photos, documents, the key, and the letter from their father. Oliver listened in silence. At first he looked angry, then confused, then lost. "I always wondered why I didn't fit," he said finally, like something in me was waiting for a reason. Clara looked at him gently. "I think we were both waiting." Oliver leaned forward. "But why now? Why would he lead you to May?" "I don't know, but someone doesn't want us digging. Someone's already warned me off." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe there's more we haven't seen yet." Back in the city, Clara and Oliver returned to the hidden archive together. As they stepped inside, they found something that wasn't there before. A small box placed on the chest with Clara's name. A note sat on top. "If you've made it this far, you need to understand the full truth. But the truth comes with a cost." Inside the box were cassette tapes, labeled only with dates. The earliest one was from 1992, the year their father disappeared. Clara placed it into an old player in the archive room and pressed play. Her father's voice crackled through the speaker. "If this message is playing, then I have failed to protect what I started. But you are my legacy now. Clara, Oliver. There are things I've done that can't be forgiven, but you must know why." The tape went silent for a moment. "I was part of Project Decipher. We were told we were protecting the nation, but we were protecting secrets, some too dark to name. I walked away, or tried to. That's when they came for me. That's when I hid everything, including the two of you." Clara and Oliver stared at the speaker, not breathing. "I separated you for your safety. I wanted you to live lives away from this shadow. But if you're hearing this, the past has caught up." The tape ended. They sat in silence. Then Clara whispered, "What was Project Decipher?" Oliver looked at her. "And why does it sound like it's not over?" The next morning, Clara woke with a pounding headache. She had barely slept. The voice of her father echoed in her mind. His words, "The past has caught up," played over and over. Oliver was already up, sitting at her kitchen table, flipping through one of the files. "You ever hear of this name?" he asked, tapping a document. "Dr. Langston Hale." Clara read the page. Hale's name appeared several times, always beside words like research division, neural mapping, and phase 4. She shook her head. "Never, but he sounds important." Oliver leaned back. It says here he was part of the team that started Project Cypher. But then he vanished. No record, no obituary, nothing. Clara's eyes narrowed. What if he's still alive? Oliver raised an eyebrow. You want to find him? Clara hesitated. I think we have to. They traced the last known address listed for Dr. Haletto, a university campus just outside the city. It had been 30 years since he worked there, but it was a start. At the campus, they found a retired janitor who remembered Hale. He was different, the man said. Smart, too smart. Always walked around with papers covered in symbols. Then one day, poof, gone. No goodbye. His office was cleared out overnight. He led them to the old science building. The office was now used for storage, but behind a cabinet, Clara found a crack in the wall, like a panel had once been removed. Inside the crack was a hidden envelope. Oliver opened it. Inside was a photo of a group of men in suits, including their father and Hale. On the back, one sentence was written in faded ink. The mind is the final gate. Clara shivered. Back at the archive, they listened to more tapes. One of them detailed experiments, memory control, identity erasure, dream mapping. Things that sounded like science fiction. Their father's voice came through shaky. They wanted to build a map of the human mind, to hide secrets there, to plant memories. They used volunteers, then they used prisoners, then they used us. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Wait, Oliver said. Used us? Clara rewound the tape. They used us, their father repeated. Children born into the program, monitored, measured, marked. Clara, Oliver. I'm so sorry. Clara felt the room spin. We were part of it, she whispered. I don't remember anything, Oliver said. That's the point, Clara replied. They didn't want us to. Over the next days, the weight of the truth pressed down harder. Oliver became restless, angry, short-tempered. He punched a wall in frustration. They stole our lives, he yelled. We didn't even know each other existed. Clara tried to stay calm, but inside, she was crumbling too. She began having strange dreams, flickers of white rooms, strange machines, people in masks. She kept seeing a red light flashing, and always the voice of a man whispering, "Remember the door." One morning, Clara found a new envelope outside her apartment. Inside was a photo of her and Oliver standing outside the university. The message, "You were warned. Walk away or disappear like the rest." She showed Oliver. He didn't hesitate. We're not backing down, but Clara felt fear creeping in. Not for herself, for him. They kept digging. Each answer led to more questions. And slowly, another truth emerged. There was a third subject. File 3, Clara Oliver. And someone listed only as Subject E. No name, no photo, just a note, activated early. Status, unknown. Clara whispered, "There's someone else." "Another sibling?" Oliver asked. "Or something else entirely?" They searched every file, every tape, but nothing revealed who Subject E was. Until the final tape, their father's voice, tired and raw. "If you're still listening, there's one thing I couldn't tell you before. One truth I couldn't bear to say. Subject E was the prototype, the first. And they weren't like you." Static filled the speaker. They were changed, made into something else, and now they're free. Clara stood frozen. The room around her felt suddenly colder. The words her father spoke, "They're free," echoed in her mind like a warning bell. Oliver frowned. What does that even mean? Changed into what? Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. Her thoughts were spinning too fast. Subject E wasn't just another child in the program. They were different, altered, made. Later that evening, Oliver left the archive to grab food. Clara stayed behind, unable to pull herself away from the documents. She flipped through one of the older files and found something new tucked between two pages, a ripped photo. It was a group of 5 children sitting in a circle. She recognized herself. She recognized Oliver. There was a third child, a little boy, his face half torn off from the rip. His eyes had been circled in red ink. Clara stared at the image, her heart pounding. She flipped it over. A single word had been written on the back in black marker. Elias. Her breath caught in her throat. A name. She ran to the tape box and began searching the earlier dates, desperate for something she might have missed. At the bottom of the pile, she found a dusty tape labeled simply E. She hesitated, then placed it in the player. The voice was different. Not her father's. It was a child. "I don't like the red room," the voice said. "They say it makes me smarter, but it hurts. I want to go home. I miss Clara. I miss the other boy too. They said I'll forget them soon. I don't want to forget." Clara's knees gave out. She dropped to the floor. Oliver walked in seconds later, holding a paper bag. "Clara?" he asked. Then he saw her face. She looked up, tears falling down her cheeks. She pointed to the speaker. "We knew him, Oliver. Elias. We loved him." Oliver set the bag down and listened. The child on the tape continued. "They gave me something to drink. It made everything quiet. I think something's changing. They said I'll be useful soon, that I'll help stop the truth from spreading." The tape ended with soft humming, a lullaby. Clara whispered, "He was like us, but they did something worse to him." Oliver sat beside her. "If he's out there, we have to find him. Or stop him," Clara said. They traced the old research reports, searching for references to Elias. The last log was 12 years old. It mentioned a breach in Facility 9. A subject escape. No further entries after that. "Facility 9 was shut down," Oliver said. "But it's on the edge of the forest, near the river. People say it's haunted." Clara nodded. "Then we go." They packed supplies and drove out of the city the next morning. The forest was thick, the roads broken. After hours of hiking through dense trees, they found it, Facility 9. The building was a shell, broken windows, metal doors rusted shut, vines crept along the walls. Clara found a side entrance half collapsed. They crawled through and entered a dark hallway. Their flashlights cut through the dust. The walls were lined with faded posters. "Unlock the mind, unlock the future." And below them, claw marks. Oliver gripped her arm. "This place isn't just abandoned, it was cleared in a hurry." They reached a room at the end of the hall. A single word painted on the door in red, "Remember." Inside, the room was empty except for a chair and a mirror. On the mirror, someone had etched, "Clara, I remember." Clara stumbled back. "He's here." A sound echoed down the hallway. Footsteps, slow, steady. They turned off their lights, the door creaked, and a voice, soft and low, came from the darkness. "Clara, you came back." She stepped forward, heart racing. "Elias?" A boy stepped into the room. No longer a boy. A man now. Pale skin, sunken eyes. But his voice still had the tremble of that tape. "You left me," he said. "They took you away, and I stayed." Clara's voice shook. "We didn't know. We were made to forget." Elias stared at her. "But I didn't forget. Not you. Not Oliver." Oliver stepped forward slowly. "They hurt you, we know, but we're not them." Elias flinched like the name burned him. "They said I was broken. They said I wasn't real." Clara took another step. "You are real, and you're not alone anymore." Elias looked at his reflection in the mirror. "I don't know who I am." She reached out gently. "You're Elias. You're my brother." He stared at her hand. His fingers twitched. Then his eyes widened. "They're coming." Clara's blood ran cold. "Woo." He turned to them, panic in his voice. "The Watchers. They followed you here. You led them to me." A deep rumble shook the building. Outside, dark figures began surrounding the facility. Clara whispered, "It was a trap." Elias grabbed their hands. "We have to run. Now." The ground trembled beneath their feet as they ran. Dust rained from the ceiling. Clara's heart pounded with each step as Elias led them through narrow halls and hidden doors he knew by memory. "The east wing leads to the river," Elias shouted, his voice strained. "There's a tunnel there. I used it once, years ago." They turned a sharp corner just as a burst of light flared behind them. A window shattered. A figure stepped through, tall, wrapped in black, face hidden by a visor. Clara looked back just long enough to see more coming, silent, swift, like shadows with weapons. "Don't stop!" Oliver yelled, gripping Clara's arm. The corridor narrowed. Pipes hung from the ceiling like metal vines. Elias darted ahead, barefoot, faster than both of them, his memory of the place razor-sharp. He shoved open a rusted steel door, revealing a staircase that spiraled downward into blackness. "In here!" he called. They stumbled down the stairs. Behind them, heavy boots pounded closer. Shots rang out, echoing off the walls. One whizzed past Clara's ear, hitting the wall with a crack of sparks. They reached the bottom. Elias shoved a panel aside, revealing a tight tunnel with damp walls. It smelled like dirt and metal. "In here," he whispered, ducking inside. The tunnel was barely wide enough for them to crawl. They moved fast, scraping their hands and knees, hearts hammering. Clara whispered, "Who are the Watchers?" Elias replied quietly, "They were the guards. Then they became hunters. They don't protect secrets. They erase them." They emerged from the tunnel near the edge of the river. Night had fallen. The sky was black, and the only light came from the moon reflected on the water. They paused to catch their breath. Oliver leaned over, gasping. Elias stood straight, calm now. "They won't stop, not until we give them what they want." Clara looked at him. "What do they want?" Elias looked down. "Me." Silence. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to go back. If I don't, they'll come after you," Elias said. "They'll burn every trace of us to the ground." Oliver stepped forward. "There has to be another way." "There is," Elias said, "but it means opening the vault." Clara frowned. "Vault?" Elias nodded. "Everything they want, the data, the experiments, the truth about Project Cypher, it's stored in one final place. Our father hid it before he disappeared. That's why they haven't killed us yet. They think we know where it is." Clara remembered something, an old letter tucked in the pages of her father's book. It spoke of a final lock buried beneath the old lighthouse on the coast. A place no one visits, a place time forgot. She pulled the letter out from her backpack and handed it to Elias. He read it in silence, then looked up. "That's it. That's the vault." Oliver narrowed his eyes. "Then we end this. We go there. We take what's ours." Clara looked between them. Her brothers. 2 pieces of a puzzle she never knew was missing. She nodded. The next morning they set out. They avoided cities, traveled at night, slept in quiet motels with no names. Every few hours they changed routes, knowing the Watchers were close. Clara could feel them. At last, they reached the coast. The lighthouse stood tall, its paint chipped and its glass shattered. Waves crashed against the rocks below. The wind howled like a warning. They entered through a broken door. The air smelled of salt and thyme. Inside, the stairs spiraled up, but Elias pointed downward. The vaults beneath. They found a trapdoor under a pile of rotting wood. Clara used the key, the very one she found in the taxi. It clicked. The trapdoor creaked open. They descended into darkness. At the bottom was a room lined with stone walls. In the center sat a console, blinking faintly. Beside it, an old scanner. Clara stepped forward. The screen lit up. Voice verification required. Elias stepped close and whispered, "Thomas Hayes." A pause. Then, "Welcome back." The walls hummed. Lights flickered on. Panels slid open, revealing shelves of drives, folders and video reels. Clara stepped closer, her eyes wide. "It's all here, everything. Files marked Cypher Stage 1. Photos of scientists, reports of memory transfers, audio logs of children crying. It was sickening and undeniable. Elias stared at a screen flashing names. Subject A, Clara Hayes. Subject B, Oliver Marks. Subject E, Elias. Then a fourth name appeared. Subject F, unknown. Clara's mouth went dry. "There's another," she whispered. Oliver leaned in. "We're not the last." Before they could react, the lights went red. A siren began to wail. Elias spun around. "They found us!" A mechanical voice echoed through the stone chamber. "Security breach detected. Exit sequence disabled." Clara's breath caught. The only door they'd entered through, now sealed shut with a heavy clang. The red lights pulsed like a heartbeat. Each one seemed to count down to something none of them could see. Oliver grabbed a metal rod from the floor and ran to the door, trying to pry it open. "We're trapped." Elias stood still, eyes darting around the vault. "There's another exit," he said. "There has to be." Clara turned back to the console, frantically flipping through files, her fingers trembling. One folder stood out. It was labeled Fail Safe. She clicked it. A series of video logs appeared. Her father, older now, eyes sunken, hair grayer. He looked like a man running out of time. "If you're watching this," he said, "you've opened the vault. That means I failed to stop them, and now you must decide what to do with the truth." He looked directly into the camera. The Watchers were never meant to protect secrets. They were meant to erase people. They've already wiped hundreds, scientists, whistleblowers, children. Clara's hands went cold. "But the truth can't stay buried. That's why I created the beacon." The screen flickered, showing an old satellite dish and a control panel. Coordinates flashed: 38.107N, 122.869W. Broadcast the files, all of them. Let the world see. That's the only way to stop this. The log ended. Behind her, Elias was typing quickly at the terminal. "I can redirect the files to the beacon satellite, but once we trigger the transfer, they'll destroy this place." Clara looked at Oliver. He nodded. "Do it," she said. Elias hit enter. The screens went white. "Upload in progress." A loud bang shook the walls. The vault door hissed, then groaned. Metal warped inward like something was trying to tear through. Oliver backed up. "How much time do we have?" "Minutes, maybe less," Elias said. Clara spotted a tunnel symbol on the far wall, half hidden behind equipment. She ran to it, pulled away a grate, and found a shaft just big enough for one person at a time. "Go!" she shouted. Oliver went first, then Clara. Elias stayed behind, typing faster. "Elias," she called. "Now." But he didn't move. He turned toward them with a strange calm in his eyes. "They'll stop the upload if I leave. Someone has to stay." "No," Clara screamed. "You can't." "Clara," he said softly, "I was made to be the shield. This is my choice." Tears ran down her face. She reached out for him, but Oliver pulled her into the tunnel. The last thing she saw was Elias at the console, the light from the screen glowing on his face. Then darkness swallowed them. They crawled for what felt like forever until they reached a hatch that opened near the cliffs. Behind them, the mountain shook, an explosion ripping through the lighthouse ruins. Smoke and fire spilled into the night sky. Clara fell to her knees, sobbing. Oliver held her, his own face streaked with dirt and tears. They had lost him. But then, the satellite tower in the distance lit up, and a piercing sound cut through the silence. A signal had been sent. Across the world, servers lit up with the incoming data, files, videos. Voices long erased now speaking again. The truth could no longer be hidden. Clara watched the sky. "He did it," she whispered. Days passed. Governments denied involvement. News outlets scrambled to explain. Protests began. People demanded answers. But the Watchers disappeared, vanished into the shadows. Clara and Oliver lived quietly now, far from the city. No more keys, no more files, just silence. until one evening Clara received a letter with no return address. Inside was a photo, Elias, alive, smiling, standing beside a shadowed figure with a faint scar across their cheek. On the back of the photo was a single question. "Do you remember Subject F?" Clara stared at the photo, her fingers trembling. The air around her seemed to freeze. Elias was alive. Not only that, but he wasn't alone. She turned the photo over again. "Do you remember Subject F?" The words sent a chill down her spine. She rushed to the back room where Oliver was repairing a broken chair, completely unaware. She held the photo out in front of him without a word. He stood slowly, wiped his hands on his jeans, and looked at it. His breath caught. "He's alive?" Clara nodded. "But look at the person beside him." Oliver squinted at the figure standing next to Elias. Their face wasn't fully visible, but there was something about the posture, the expression, even in shadow, that felt familiar. "I don't recognize them," he said. "I think I do," Clara whispered. She opened her father's old book again. In the last section, there had been a list, initials, dates, and fragments of files she couldn't make sense of before. Now she looked closer. One of them read, "Subject F, final sequence initiated. Observer class, non-containable." A note was scribbled next to it in her father's handwriting. "F was never one of us." Clara looked up. What if Subject F wasn't part of the experiment? Oliver frowned. Then what were they? What if they were the reason the experiment existed? Oliver didn't respond right away. He pulled down a map they'd been using, pinpoints of every cipher site, every vault, every trace of the past. In the corner was one dot they never visited. It was in the middle of nowhere, a barren desert with no records, no files, no explanation. "We skipped this one," Oliver said. "Too remote, too empty." Clara traced her finger over it. What if that's where Subject F began? A knock at the door cut through the room. Both of them froze. No one knew where they lived. No one had come by in weeks. Oliver moved slowly to the door. Clara followed, heart thumping. He peeked through the small hole. He blinked, then looked at her. "It's Elias." She rushed to the door and opened it. Elias stood there, alive, covered in dirt, his hair longer now, eyes wide but clear. Clara hugged him before he could speak. Oliver grabbed him next, then Clara pulled back, her eyes full of questions. "I saw the photo," she said. "Who was with you?" Elias looked at them both, then said softly, "Not who, what." He stepped inside and sat down. "I didn't die in the vault. The system triggered a secondary exit. I made it out through a lower chamber deep under the cliffs, but they were waiting for me." "Who?" Oliver asked. "The ones who created Cypher." Clara whispered. "I thought it was the government." Elias shook his head. "The government was just the front. The real force behind Cypher was an old group called the Origin Society. They've existed longer than any of us knew. Cypher was just one of their tools." Clara sank into the chair. "And Subject F?" Elias's voice dropped. "They built it." Oliver leaned in. "Built?" Elias nodded. "Subject F wasn't born. It was engineered, designed to mimic us, blend in. But its mind was different, quiet, controlled. They say it doesn't feel the way we do, but it remembers everything." Clara swallowed. "Then why is it with you?" Elias looked away. "Because it's tired of running too. It doesn't want to hide anymore. And it remembers you, Clara." Her hands trembled. "Me? You knew it. Before Cypher started. You were only 5. You called it Emmy. You thought it was your imaginary friend." Clara's breath caught. Old memories surfaced, half dreams of a voice at night, a friend who knew her secrets, who disappeared one day and never came back. Oliver stepped back. "Is it here?" Elias nodded. There was a soft knock on the door again. This time, Clara stood slowly. She opened the door. A figure stood there, shorter than Elias, hair tucked under a cap, eyes grey and calm. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then the figure smiled. "Hi, Clara," it said in a voice soft as wind. "It's good to see you again." Clara stared into those eyes. There was a warmth in them now, a flicker of something real, emotion. She stepped aside and let them in. Elias watched carefully. Oliver stayed by the window, always on guard. Clara sat across from subject F, Emmy. "Why now?" she asked. Emmy looked around the room. "Because the people who built me are afraid. You started something. The world knows. They can't hide anymore." "What do they want from you?" Oliver asked. "To shut me down," Emmy said calmly. "But I've already made my choice." Clara leaned in. "Which is?" "To help you finish what your father started." A long silence filled the room. Then Emmy reached into their jacket and placed a small device on the table. It lit up, displaying a map, locations, names, coordinates. "The last cipher vaults," Emmy said. "The ones even your father never found." Oliver stared. "This could change everything." Clara nodded. Emmy looked at her, eyes full of something strange and new. "Are you ready, Clara?" Clara took a breath. Then she smiled. "I was born ready." But in the back of her mind a question lingered. If subject F was engineered, who built them? And more importantly, what if there's a subject G?